"My children are hungry," pleads the Apache widow as a rancher catches her stealing eggs. The desert valley stretched under a sky bruised with early morning light. Shadows clung to the rocks and the dry grasses whispered in the wind, carrying secrets of the past. At the edge of the valley, a lone ranch stood, its wooden fences worn and splintered, its fields quiet and still. The land seemed empty, but it was far from safe. Some said the wind carried voices, and the land itself watched anyone who dared enter it. Ilara moved through the shadows, silent as the dusk owls that had long abandoned the night. Her small children slept huddled in the corner of their tent, unaware of the hunger that gnawed at them. Their father had been gone for seasons now, taken by sickness that swept through their tribe like a shadow no one could stop. Since then, she had learned to survive in ways the world called dishonorable. But to her, it was survival, nothing more. She approached the ranch, her hands trembling as she scanned the small henhouse. The scent of fresh straw and warm eggs filled the air. Her stomach tightened. One egg could feed her children for a morning, but she needed more than that, more than the world seemed willing to give. Ilara crouched behind a stack of crates, watching the hens move lazily in the sunlight. She counted silently, 3, 4, 5. Her heart beat faster with each step forward. The land itself seemed to hold its breath. A sudden sound made her freeze. The fence creaked. A shadow moved across the ground, a man, broad-shouldered, tall, with a presence that made the air itself feel heavier. Cole, the rancher, was already there, watching her. His eyes, dark and serious, were like storm clouds. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice deep, calm, but with a sharp edge that made her flinch. Ilara's throat tightened. She wanted to run, but she couldn't leave her children hungry. "Please, my children are hungry," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "I only want a few eggs, that is all." Cole studied her for a long moment, silence stretching between them like a taut rope. There was something about her, something in the way she carried herself, proud and unbroken despite her ragged clothes and desperate eyes, that made him pause. Most people would have run at the first warning. She had stayed. "Do you steal often?" Cole asked, stepping closer. The sun caught on the metal of his belt buckle, glinting like a warning. Ilara shook her head. "Only when I have no choice. My children are starving. I cannot watch them suffer." Cole's gaze softened just a fraction, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He had rules, obligations, a reputation that demanded he act. And yet something in him hesitated. He had lost people once, loved people once, and he knew hunger. He knew fear. "Come here," he said finally, not as a command, but as a curious invitation. Ilara stepped forward cautiously. The hens scattered, clucking in alarm, and the wind swirled around them like the world itself had taken notice. "You are brave or foolish," Cole said. "Perhaps both. Why didn't you ask? Why steal when you could have asked?" Ilara's lips pressed into a thin line. Asking often brings shame, and sometimes the world does not answer. You do not know what it is like to watch your children's ribs show through their skin and do nothing. Cole nodded slowly, the anger in him softening into something heavier, something like understanding. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few coins. "Take this. Buy what you need, but know this, if I catch you again." "I will not return," she interrupted, a spark of pride in her eyes. "I will find another way." The wind gusted, sweeping across the valley, carrying a distant sound. A low, unsettling growl, barely audible, yet impossible to ignore. Both Cole and Ilara froze. The hairs on their necks stood on end. "What was that?" Ilara whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Cole's jaw tightened. "Something that should not be here," he said, scanning the horizon. The shadows between the rocks seemed to shift, moving unnaturally. He had heard stories as a boy, old tales of spirits tied to the land, of curses that lingered like smoke. He had never believed them fully until now. Ilara felt a chill. She had seen strange things in the desert at night, visions of her husband, warnings carried by the wind, but she had thought them dreams. Now, looking at the rancher's tense stance and the restless shadows, she wondered if the land itself was alive, judging her, testing her. You see it too?" she asked. Cole didn't answer at first. He only nodded once, his eyes dark with caution. "We should move," he said. "Inside, now." Alara followed him into the house, her small hands brushing against the wooden walls as if seeking comfort. The ranch was quiet, but the silence was heavy, filled with expectation. Outside, the wind howled through the fences, carrying the faint sound of the unseen creature, patient and waiting. Inside, they stood near the fireplace. Cole broke a few eggs he had hidden in a small basket. "For your children," he said, handing them to her. Alara's hands shook as she took them. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know how to repay you." Cole shook his head. "No repayment. But understand this land, it has eyes and it does not forgive easily." Alara's eyes widened. "Eyes? The desert, the valley, the land itself," he explained. "It remembers every act, every word. It watches those who step upon it. Some call it a curse. Some call it protection. Either way, it tests us." Alara swallowed hard. She had never heard words so true yet so terrifying. Her whole life had been a dance with unseen forces, guiding her steps, warning her, haunting her. And now she realized she had stepped too close to something powerful, something ancient. The two of them sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind, feeling the weight of the unseen eyes. Neither spoke. Outside, the hens clucked nervously, sensing the same presence, and the shadows flickered across the walls of the house. Cole finally spoke, his voice low. "You must leave before nightfall. The land does not forgive trespassers after dark." Alara nodded, but fear and curiosity mingled in her chest. "I will leave," she said. "But will you watch over them? My children?" Cole's eyes softened for the briefest moment. "I will, but you must be careful. Not everything that watches is forgiving." As the sun climbed higher, Alara left the ranch with the eggs cradled in her arms. Behind her, the valley seemed to hum, the wind carrying a voice she could almost hear. "The bond begins, the paths are set." She glanced back once, and for a fleeting instant she thought she saw a shadow, tall and dark, standing just beyond the fence. Not Cole, but something older, something patient and infinitely watchful. Her heart skipped a beat. By the time she returned to her children, the sun had painted the valley in golden light. The children squealed in delight at the eggs, unaware of the danger that still lingered beyond the hills. Alara smiled, but her thoughts kept returning to the shadow, to Cole, to the strange growl of the land itself. That night, as she wrapped her children in blankets, she saw in the flickering firelight the shape of a figure standing at the edge of the valley. Not fully human, not fully spirit, watching, waiting. Alara pressed her lips together. Tomorrow she would have to return to the ranch. She did not yet know why, but a pull, stronger than hunger, stronger than fear, tugged her toward that land, toward that man, toward the mystery that waited in the shadows. And somewhere beyond the hills, Cole stared at the same horizon, knowing that the desert, the land, and perhaps fate itself had placed them on the same path. Something was coming, something ancient and patient, and neither of them could turn away. The valley was quiet again, but for both of them the night had begun. The land was watching, and it would not forget. The sun had barely risen when Alara returned to the ranch the next morning. Her children's laughter and chatter lingered in her mind like a fragile song she wanted to protect at all costs. She had promised herself she would survive, no matter what the world demanded of her. Hunger had pushed her to the edge yesterday, but now there was another force tugging at her. A strange curiosity about the man who had shown her kindness, and about the land that seemed alive with secrets. Cole had been waiting at the fence when she arrived, his figure dark against the rising sun. His eyes, sharp and assessing, softened slightly as he saw her approach. "You came back," he said simply. Not a question, not a judgment, just a statement. "I needed more for my children," she replied, holding her hands together. "Please, I can work for it. I can help on the ranch." Cole studied her for a long moment. There was something in her tone, determination and pride mixed with desperation, that reminded him of himself in years past, when he had no one to trust but the land and the cattle. "Very well," he said finally. "You may stay, but you follow my rules." One misstep and his voice trailed off, but the warning was clear. Ilara bowed her head. "I understand." The first day on the ranch was hard. Cole assigned her small tasks, gathering eggs, feeding the chickens, mending fences. Her hands grew calloused, her muscles ached, but with every movement she felt a strange sense of purpose. The children would not go hungry today, and perhaps tomorrow would be easier. Yet the land around them seemed to watch. The wind whispered through the dry grasses, carrying hints of voices that were almost human. Birds circled overhead, but not freely. They moved as if guided by some unseen hand. Even the cattle seemed uneasy, turning their heads toward empty patches of sky. Cole noticed it first. He had lived on this land all his life, and he had never felt it so restless. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked one evening as they worked side by side in the fading light. Ilara paused, wiping sweat from her brow. "The wind, the eyes in the shadows?" she asked. Cole nodded. "Yes, something is here, watching, waiting." Ilara shivered. She had known the desert carried spirits, whispers of old pacts and broken promises, but to hear it confirmed by another was chilling. Yet it was also comforting. She was not alone in sensing the land's weight. As days passed, their uneasy partnership grew into something more complicated. Cole was strict but fair. He did not spare her from hard work, but he respected her efforts and praised her cleverness when she solved problems quickly. Ilara, in turn, found herself learning the rhythms of the ranch, understanding the cattle, the land, and even Cole himself. Late one evening, after the sun had disappeared behind the hills, Ilara sat by the fire outside her small tent. Cole joined her, carrying a small lantern that painted their faces in soft, flickering light. "You're different from the others who come here," Cole said quietly. "Most would have begged, cried, or run. You endure." Ilara smiled faintly, looking into the fire. "Endure, that is all I have ever known. Endure or watch those I love suffer. It is simple." Cole hesitated, then asked, "Have you ever thought about what could be more than survival?" Ilara glanced at him, caught off guard. "More than survival? Yes, life beyond fear. Beyond hunger, beyond the shadows that follow us." His voice was low, but there was something raw in it, a longing she did not expect to hear. Ilara did not answer immediately. She had dreamed of it. Sometimes, in the quiet of night, she imagined a life without constant fear. But it felt impossible, like trying to catch the wind with her bare hands. And yet, in the way Cole looked at her, there was a hint of promise, fragile and unspoken. Before either could speak again, a distant sound reached their ears, a crackle, followed by a low, unnatural roar. Both froze. "The land," Cole muttered. "It grows restless again." Ilara's heart thumped. She had felt it before, the silent warning that something was coming. She had learned to trust her instincts, and they screamed at her now. Suddenly, the night exploded with firelight. The horizon glowed red as if the sky itself had caught on fire. Smoke rose in dark ribbons, twisting unnaturally toward the stars. Cole's face hardened. "Stay here. Watch the children. I'll see what's happening." Ilara shook her head. "I am not leaving them." "You will need my help." Cole looked at her, his eyes darkening. "It's dangerous. You cannot face this alone." "I am not alone," she said firmly, gripping his arm. "We face it together." Cole did not respond, but he did not move away. Instead, they ran together toward the source of the fire, the wind carrying the acrid scent of smoke and a strange, otherworldly heat. The cattle scattered, their frightened cries adding to the chaos. The flames licked the edges of the dry valley, fueled by a force that was not natural. As they approached, Cole could see shapes moving within the fire. Not human shapes, not entirely. Shadows twisted like smoke, forming figures that seemed to stretch and bend against the wind. His heart pounded in a rhythm he had not known since he was a boy facing danger he could not explain. Alara's grip on his hand tightened. "It's the curse. The spirits, they are angry," she whispered. Cole glanced at her, realizing how little she feared compared to him. Her eyes shone with courage, determination, and a fierce protective love for her children. He felt a surge of admiration and something deeper he could not name. The firestorm moved closer, unnatural in its speed and shape. Cole's mind raced. He knew the land could harbor spirits tied to old pacts, to promises broken long ago, and he now realized with a chilling certainty that this was one of those moments where the past demanded reckoning. "Here," he said, pulling Alara behind a boulder. "Stay low. Do not let them see you." Alara crouched, peering around the edge. The fire flickered unnaturally, revealing glimpses of faces in the flames, faces that seemed both human and not, distorted in their rage and sorrow. The land itself seemed alive, as if it were angry with every trespasser, every failure, every broken promise. Cole took a deep breath. "We have to protect the children, no matter what." Alara nodded, her fear mingling with resolve. "Yes, together." They sprinted back to the ranch, the heat of the firestorm close enough to singe their hair. When they reached the children, they found them crying but unharmed. The small tent shivered under the wind, the flames licking dangerously close. Alara gathered her children, holding them close. Cole worked quickly, reinforcing the tent and guiding the children to safety. Their movements were precise, instinctive, as if the land itself demanded their cooperation. And in that moment, Alara realized something profound. They were no longer two strangers bound by circumstance. They were allies, united by necessity and growing trust, standing together against forces neither fully understood. The firestorm passed by dawn, leaving blackened earth, twisted grass, and an unsettling silence. The land seemed to sigh as if satisfied, or perhaps only patient, waiting for the next test. Cole and Alara stood side by side, surveying the damage. Their faces were streaked with soot, their hands trembling from exhaustion, yet a strange bond had formed in the crucible of fear. "You fought well," Cole said quietly. "Your courage, I underestimated it." Alara shook her head. "We fought together. Without you, the children, we would have lost them." Cole looked at her, truly looked, and saw not just a desperate woman but a survivor, a protector, a force of nature in her own right. His respect for her deepened, and with it, a complicated feeling he had not named: admiration, longing, and something tender. But before either could dwell on it, the wind shifted. A low, whispering voice carried across the valley, almost human, almost mocking. "The bond has begun, but the path will be darker than you know." Both Cole and Alara stiffened. The wind carried no trace of fire this time, but the weight of the voice pressed on them as if the valley itself had spoken. Alara held her children closer. It's not finished," she said, her voice barely audible. Cole's jaw tightened. "No, whatever this is, it's only beginning." As the sun rose fully over the valley, it revealed the blackened traces of the firestorm and the trembling land around the ranch. Neither Cole nor Alara spoke for a long time. Words were useless against the knowledge that something ancient and patient had taken notice of them. And as they stood there, hearts still pounding, the first flicker of movement appeared on the far hill. A shadow, distant yet deliberate, watching, waiting, its intentions unknown. Alara's eyes met Cole's, and in that silent moment they both understood something vital. Survival was no longer just about food or fire. It was about trust, courage, and the bond forming between them, a bond that fate had demanded and that the land itself would test. The valley, alive with unseen eyes, had set the stage, and the story of Cole, Alara, and the restless spirits of the land was only beginning. The desert watches, it waits. And the bond it has forged cannot be broken. The morning air was crisp and quiet, almost too quiet, as if the valley itself held its breath. The firestorm from the night before had left the land blackened and scarred, the scent of ash hanging heavy in the air. Alara and Cole walked side by side, their boots crunching over the brittle grass. Her children followed closely, still trembling from the terror they had witnessed. Cole glanced at Alara. She seemed smaller somehow, fragile after the night's ordeal, yet her eyes burned with a fire that could not be extinguished. She had faced danger without hesitation, her courage fierce and unwavering. And yet there was a shadow in her gaze, a past she did not share, a sorrow she carried alone. "You cannot bear all of it by yourself," Cole said quietly, breaking the silence. "The land, it takes more than courage. It demands strength but also wisdom." Alara shook her head. "I am used to walking through shadows," she whispered. "I have no choice. I must protect my children no matter what comes." Cole studied her closely. There was truth in her words, but there was also a burden heavier than most could imagine. And for the first time, he felt a desire not just to help her, but to know her, her fears, her secrets, and the pain that clung to her like a second skin. They reached the small well near the edge of the ranch, its water dark but clear. Alara knelt and let her hands cup the cool liquid. Cole watched, silent, until she finally spoke. "There is something I must tell you," she said, her voice low, almost hesitant. "Something I have not shared with anyone, not even my children." Cole nodded. "You can tell me." Alara took a deep breath. Before my husband died, he made a pact, a promise to spirits older than this land to protect our people. But the pact, it went wrong. The spirits, they are restless, angry. They watch me, the children, even those who help me. That is why the land has changed, why the firestorm came." Cole's eyes darkened. He had heard legends, stories whispered in the wind about pacts and spirits, but to hear it from someone who had lived it, it was different. "And you fear they will come for you," he said softly. "Yes," she admitted, "and yet I cannot leave, I cannot hide. My children, they are all I have left." Cole placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are not alone anymore," he said firmly. "We will face this together. Whatever comes, we face it as one." Alara looked at him, searching his eyes. For a moment the weight of her fear lifted, replaced by a fragile trust. "Together," she whispered. Days passed in uneasy routine. Alara helped on the ranch, tending to the animals, mending fences, and teaching her children to be cautious of the land's strange moods. Cole trained her in the ways of survival on the ranch, but also in reading the land, the wind, the shadows, the subtle signs that spoke of danger. Each day their bond grew stronger, a quiet understanding weaving between them. But the peace was fragile. At dusk, the wind often carried whispers, distant cries, and fleeting shadows that moved unnaturally. One evening, as the sun bled red over the horizon, the children played near the edge of the burnt field. Alara watched them tense, while Cole inspected the ranch. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A low, guttural sound rose from the valley, reverberating through the air. Birds took flight and the cattle scattered in panic. Alara grabbed her children, pulling them close. Cole's voice was steady, though his jaw was tight. "The spirits, they are close. We need to move." Before they could act, a shadow emerged from the far hill, a figure tall, cloaked in darkness, yet unmistakably human in shape. Its eyes glowed faintly, a deep amber that seemed to pierce through the fading light. The air grew thick, almost suffocating, and a sense of ancient power radiated from it. Alara's heart pounded. "It's here," she whispered. "The one my husband, the pact." Her words faltered, the weight of her secret pressing down on her chest. Cole stepped in front of the children, his stance protective, unwavering. "Stay behind me," he said. "No matter what happens, you will not be harmed." The figure moved closer, and with each step, the wind seemed to carry whispers, words in a language older than memory. Cole felt a shiver run down his spine. He had fought against the harshness of nature, against men and beasts, but this was something beyond understanding. Alara swallowed hard, her hand brushing Cole's arm. "It knows us," she whispered. "It knows everything." The shadow stopped a few yards from them, its form shimmering like smoke in the dying light. Then, in a voice both human and otherworldly, it spoke. "You carry the weight of the past, yet you cling to life. Courage is admirable, but will it be enough?" Cole squared his shoulders. "We do not fear you," he said. "We will protect what matters, and we will not leave this valley in your hands." The figure tilted its head as if amused by his defiance. "Very well," it said, "but to survive one must offer more than courage. One must sacrifice or be consumed." Alara felt a chill. She knew the spirits demanded something, but the thought of losing herself or her children was unbearable. Her grip on Cole's arm tightened. "We will find a way. Together," she whispered, though her voice trembled. The shadow dissipated as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only the trembling wind and a faint scent of smoke. Cole exhaled slowly, his body tense with exhaustion. Alara held her children close, feeling the heat of their small bodies against her chest. "We cannot wait," Cole said finally. "We need to understand this before it returns. We must prepare." Alara nodded. "I know. I will tell you everything my husband left behind, the warnings, the rituals, everything." That night, around the fire, Alara spoke of her past. She told Cole of the pact, of the spirits who had once protected her people but had been angered by broken promises. She spoke of visions she had, of warnings carried by the wind, and of the shadows that had followed her for years. Cole listened silently, absorbing each word. He did not dismiss her, did not question her sanity. He had seen the land's strange power for himself. He knew that what she spoke of was real, and more than that, he knew that their survival depended on understanding it together. By dawn, they had made a plan. They would seek the old chapel on the far hill, a place said to be tied to the spirits, where ancient pacts were made and sometimes broken. There, they might find answers. As they prepared, Alara looked at Cole, her eyes reflecting both fear and trust. "I do not know what will happen," she said softly, "but I know that I cannot face it alone." "You will not," Cole replied, his voice steady. "We face it together, no matter the cost." The children clung to her, sensing the tension in the air, yet trusting the adults around them. They did not understand the full danger, but they understood enough. The land was alive and it was testing them. The journey to the chapel was perilous. The land was scarred from the firestorm, twisted and uneven. Shadows seemed to move with a mind of their own, and every gust of wind carried whispers of the past. Yet Cole and Alara moved forward, step by step, their hands brushing occasionally, a silent reassurance that they were not alone. As they reached the hill, the chapel came into view. It was old, abandoned, and crumbling, yet it radiated a strange energy. The stones seemed etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the morning light. Alara's breath caught. "This is it," she whispered. "The place my husband, the pact." Cole placed a hand on her shoulder. "Stay close. Whatever is here, we face it together." They stepped inside the chapel. The air was thick with the scent of old stone and something older, something that belonged to neither the living nor the dead. Shadows twisted unnaturally along the walls, and the symbols etched in the stones seemed to pulse with a rhythm all their own. Suddenly, a low, echoing voice filled the chamber. "Only one may survive the bond you seek, only one may offer what is demanded." Alara's heart raced. "What does it want?" she whispered. Cole did not answer. He only moved closer to her, his presence a shield against the unseen threat. "We will find out," he said, "together." But as the shadows deepened and the whispering grew louder, both of them realized a chilling truth. The spirits were testing them not just with fear, but with the strength of their bond. The chapel was alive, and it demanded a choice, a sacrifice that neither could yet understand. And in the distance, the wind carried a whisper that made Alara's blood run cold. "Only the one who loves most may hold the path to survival, but at what cost?" The chapel on the hill stood in silence, a relic of old power, its stones etched with faded symbols glowing faintly in the early light. The air was thick, almost alive, carrying the weight of centuries. Cole and Alara stood side by side, her children huddled close behind her, feeling the oppressive energy pressing in on them. The wind had stopped. Even the desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting. "Alara," Cole said quietly, "whatever happens now, we face it together. No matter what the spirits demand, no one faces it alone." Alara nodded, her small hands gripping his arm. The fear in her eyes was real, but there was also courage, tempered by love and determination. "I know," she said, "and I trust you. Whatever it asks, we will answer as one." From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked, its form flickering between solid and smoke-like, eyes glowing faint amber. The spirit had come, ancient and patient, its presence commanding the very air around them. "You come willingly," it said, voice echoing like wind through a canyon. "Few have dared to enter this place. Few have survived the tests of courage, and yet you stand together. The bond is strong, but strength alone is not enough." Cole stepped in front of Alara, shielding her children. "Tell us what you want. We will do what is needed, but we will not falter." The spirit's glow pulsed. "You carry the weight of a broken pact, of promises unkept. To survive, to release the curse upon this land, one must offer what is most precious. One must sacrifice, but also choose wisely, for love may be the key, yet love can demand the greatest test." Alara's breath caught. Her mind raced. She thought of her husband taken too soon. She thought of her children, small, fragile, and full of life. And she thought of Cole, the man who had become her protector, her ally, perhaps more than that, though neither of them had said it aloud. Cole's gaze met hers, steady and unyielding. "Whatever it asks, I will not let it harm you or your children. Not now, not ever." The spirit seemed to shift, as if considering him. Then it spoke again, its voice softer yet carrying the weight of inevitability. "Only one may offer the final gift. The one who loves most must face the ultimate trial. Only then can the land be freed, the spirits released, the bond complete." Alara's hands trembled. I do not understand. What must I do?" "You must give freely. You must face the fear that has haunted you, the grief you have carried, and the shadows of the past," the spirit said. "Only through this act of courage and love can the curse be undone." Cole moved closer, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Alara, whatever it asks, we face it together. You are not alone." She nodded, drawing strength from his presence. She thought of her children, their small faces full of trust, and she knew she could not fail, not for them, not for herself. Not for the land that had tested her so fiercely. The spirit's glow intensified, swirling around them like a storm contained within stone walls. "The trial begins," it whispered. "Face the shadows of your past, the regrets unspoken, the pain unhealed. Only then will the path to redemption open." Alara closed her eyes. She saw visions of her husband, pale and weak, whispering warnings she had not understood until now. She felt the hunger and fear of her children when he had been gone. And she felt the long nights of wandering alone, burdened by sorrow and responsibility. Cole stood silently beside her, a steady presence anchoring her to the moment. He did not speak. He did not move. He only held space for her courage to grow. Suddenly, the shadows in the chapel thickened, twisting and rising, forming shapes of people long gone, faces distorted by sorrow, longing, and unfinished business. The air was heavy with whispers, each one a memory, a fear, a regret. Alara could feel the weight pressing on her chest. Her heart threatened to break under it. And then she remembered Cole's words, "We face it together." Drawing a deep breath, she stepped forward, closing her eyes against the darkness. "I accept what has come before," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her body. "I accept the sorrow, the fear, the failures. I release them. I offer love, courage, and the protection of my children." The shadows froze, then began to dissolve, flowing back into the walls and floor as if acknowledging her bravery. The air lightened slightly, and the weight of centuries seemed to lift, replaced by a quiet, calm energy. Cole watched her, admiration and relief washing over him. Her courage had not only faced the spirits but had begun to heal the land itself. Yet the spirits' presence remained, a final test waiting in the center of the chapel. "You have shown strength," it said, voice softer now, almost approving. "But the final gift must be offered freely. One must step forward, heart open, and give what is most cherished. Only then will the bond be complete." Alara turned to Cole. Their eyes met, and in that silent moment, everything was understood. The gift was not just courage, it was love, trust, and willingness to sacrifice for another. "I step forward," she said, her voice firm. "Whatever is required, I offer it for the land, for my children, and for those I love." The spirit's glow enveloped her, and she felt warmth and power flow through her, mingled with the fear of the unknown. She thought of her children's laughter, of Cole's steady presence, and of the hope that still flickered despite all the shadows. Cole took her hand as the energy surrounded them. "We are together," he said. "Nothing can break this bond." Alara closed her eyes, letting go of fear, letting go of sorrow, and giving freely of her heart. The shadows that had haunted the valley for centuries seemed to shudder and then lift. The wind blew through the chapel, carrying the faint sound of laughter and whispers of thanks. The curse that had held the land in tension finally began to release its grip. Outside, the sun rose fully over the valley. The blackened scars of the firestorm faded, the grass began to green, and the desert wind carried a sense of renewal. The land was alive again, breathing freely. Alara opened her eyes. Cole was beside her, holding her hands, his expression full of awe and relief. She looked at her children, who peered curiously from the doorway, sensing the shift in the air. The world felt lighter, brighter, as if the weight of centuries had finally been lifted. "You did it," Cole said softly. "You freed them, you freed the land." Alara shook her head, a small smile forming on her lips. "We did it together." Cole's gaze softened. "Yes, together." For the first time in years, the valley felt safe. The sun shone warmly, birds sang freely, and the shadows that had once whispered threats were gone. The land had tested them, and they had emerged not only unbroken but stronger, bound by courage, trust, and the beginnings of love. Alara gathered her children, holding them close. "The land is safe now," she said. "We can live without fear." Cole knelt beside her. "And we will. We will protect this place together, and we will protect each other." Alara looked into his eyes, seeing the promise there, feeling the bond that had grown through fear, struggle, and shared courage. She had faced the shadows of the past, survived the tests of spirits, and found something she had not expected. Not just survival, but hope and connection. The valley seemed to respond, a gentle wind brushing through their hair, carrying the soft murmur of approval from the unseen forces. The curse was broken, the spirits released, and the land renewed. As the family walked down from the hill, the chapel behind them, the children laughing, Cole and Alara walked side by side, hands intertwined. There were no words needed. Everything they had faced, everything they had survived, was reflected in the quiet strength between them. And yet, as they reached the edge of the valley, a faint shadow flickered across the distant hills, not threatening, not alive, but watching. A reminder that the world still held mysteries, that life was fragile, and that love, courage, and trust were ongoing journeys. Alara pressed a hand against Cole's arm. "Whatever comes next," she said softly, "we will face it together." Cole nodded, squeezing her hand. "Always together." The sun rose higher, casting light over the valley that had once been dark and restless. The land breathed, alive and free, and for the first time in years, Alara felt peace. Not the fleeting peace of survival, but the deep, enduring peace that comes from knowing you have faced the darkness and emerged stronger, bound by love, courage, and hope. And so life began anew, children laughing, the ranch thriving, and two hearts forever changed by the trials they had faced. The land had been tested, and so had they. Both had passed, and in passing had found not just freedom, but each other. The desert whispered once more, soft and approving, a lullaby of endings and beginnings, of shadows vanquished and love enduring.